Deep within the core of Buddhist philosophy, reincarnation is far more than a mystical concept. It serves as a guiding path towards spiritual growth and transformation. As per ancient Buddhist wisdom, each soul undergoes countless rebirths, evolving through every lifetime according to its karma, intentions, and conscious awareness. But what unfolds when a soul is nearing the completion of its journey? What if you are living your final human incarnation, merely steps away from reaching nirvana, true liberation from suffering, rebirth, and illusion? Though many remain unaware of the deeper phases of their soul's journey, there are undeniable signs that reveal a person is approaching the end of their karmic cycle. These signs aren't marked by grand miracles or dramatic moments, but by gentle spiritual changes, quiet awakenings that show a soul no longer bound by worldly desires, ego, or attachments. In this video, we'll uncover 10 powerful indicators, grounded in Buddhist wisdom, that may reveal you are living your final reincarnation. If you resonate with even a few of these signs, it could mean your soul is approaching enlightenment and treading the sacred path to liberation. Let us begin this transformative journey with the first sign of a soul in its last life cycle. 1. Deep disinterest in materialism. A key indicator that you are nearing your final incarnation is a genuine and effortless disinterest in material pursuits. While many remain consumed by the chase for wealth, status, fame, and possessions, a soul close to completion starts to feel a natural aversion to these things. This detachment doesn't come from discipline, it unfolds organically. The things that once brought excitement to the ego now feel empty and unfulfilling. You may notice that luxury, shopping, or praise no longer bring the thrill they once did. Being around environments overly focused on material gain may leave you feeling tired or disconnected. Rather than craving more, you begin to long for simplicity, inner harmony, and deep meaning. Your focus begins to shift from external achievements to internal being. This is not apathy or laziness, it's the emergence of spiritual depth. In Buddhist philosophy, attachment to material things is seen as one of the greatest hindrances to enlightenment. The Buddha himself gave up his royal comforts upon realizing that true liberation lies not in possessions, but in freedom from desire. When your soul begins to naturally reject materialism, it shows you've integrated the karmic lessons tied to greed, craving, and clinging. This transformation also touches your relationships. You may find yourself less attracted to people who flaunt their wealth or appearance, and more drawn to those who are humble, sincere, and spiritually awake. In conversation, you might choose to explore topics like healing, purpose, or truth rather than gossip or small talk. You begin to realize that fulfillment cannot be found outside of yourself, but only through awareness, kindness, and presence. It's not that you dislike money, you just no longer see it as your identity or the source of happiness. And this gentle inner shift marks a profound milestone on the path to liberation. If this resonates with your experience, stay with us, because the signs only go deeper from here. 2. A strong pull towards solitude. As a soul approaches its final reincarnation, one of the most powerful internal changes is a growing yearning for solitude. This isn't simply a desire for temporary alone time, it's a deep inner call for silence, spaciousness, and spiritual stillness. People nearing the end of their soul's cycle often feel most alive and centered when they're by themselves. Not because they reject others, but because they've discovered the richness of their inner world. You might find yourself feeling emotionally exhausted after social gatherings, even among kind people. Casual small talk starts to feel unbearable. Noise becomes intrusive. Crowds may feel energetically suffocating. Your soul no longer seeks stimulation from the outside world. It craves inward reflection. You may start to nourish yourself through practices like meditation, journaling, or simply sitting quietly in nature. Buddhist teachings suggest that silence isn't empty, it is full of answers. As your consciousness evolves, silence becomes the sacred space where truth is revealed without interference from ego or society. This love of solitude is also deeply connected to the dissolving of the ego. Earlier in your spiritual evolution, you may have sought validation and relationships to define your worth. But as you approach your final lifetime, you begin to understand that others cannot mirror your true self. It must be discovered within. In solitude, illusions fade and authenticity begins to surface. You may feel drawn to nature, experiencing an unspoken connection with animals, trees, and flowing water. You may long for stretches of time without speaking or being connected to devices, conversations, or social media. Some people even find themselves distancing themselves from long-term friendships or family patterns, not from resentment, but in a quest to preserve peace. This deep pull toward solitude isn't isolation, it's spiritual alignment. And it's one of the clearest indicators that your soul is completing its cycle of reincarnation. 3. Intense emotional sensitivity. A distinct and powerful sign of a soul in its final incarnation is heightened emotional sensitivity, not as fragility, but as a sacred awareness of others' pain and energy. In earlier lifetimes, your soul may have needed to cultivate toughness, boundaries, or logic. But now, it begins to awaken to the truth of universal connection and unity. With this awakening comes a heightened emotional depth. You might cry more easily, not just for yourself, but for the suffering of others, including people you've never met. Art, music, or even news stories that carry themes of beauty, tragedy, or injustice may stir something profoundly deep within you. This isn't just empathy, it's the spiritual recognition that separation is an illusion. In Buddhism, this awareness is known as karuna, or compassionate insight. As your ego softens and spiritual awareness deepens, your heart opens naturally. You stop seeing people as enemies or strangers. Instead, you recognize them as fellow souls, lost in illusion just as you once were. This level of sensitivity can feel overwhelming, especially in chaotic or harsh environments. You may find yourself energetically disturbed in places like hospitals, prisons, or crowded malls, or around people carrying emotional pain. You can detect unspoken emotions, subtle energy shifts, and even facial micro-expressions. Noisy or high-energy settings might leave you overstimulated, and you often need time alone to recharge. Some might label you as an empath or a highly sensitive person. But this depth of awareness goes beyond personality. It's a soul-level transformation. Your spirit absorbs the pain of others not to suffer, but to transmute, serve, and grow. This increased sensitivity also brings with it a profound urge to help. You may feel compelled to support others through healing, service, or quiet compassion. Other people's pain begins to feel like your own, not out of burden, but as an invitation from the universe to love more deeply. You feel that call in your very being. 4. Unshakable inner peace during chaos. One of the clearest signs that you are in your final incarnation is the appearance of a deep, unwavering peace even when life feels chaotic. This serenity doesn't depend on your circumstances. It doesn't arise from success, perfect love, or material stability. It is an internal stillness that remains undisturbed by the outside world. Most people fall apart when life turns unpredictable. They react with anxiety, fear, or anger when betrayed, disappointed, or uncertain. But if you're approaching liberation, you'll begin to notice a change. You no longer get pulled into every emotional wave. You respond with calm presence instead. You may still feel sadness or frustration, but you're no longer consumed by them. You've realized that everything is temporary. This is one of the core teachings of Buddhism. All things arise and pass away. When this truth becomes lived wisdom, you gain a kind of spiritual immunity to turmoil. You stop clinging to outcomes. You stop resisting change. You begin to see pain as a teacher, not a punishment. In your last incarnation, peace becomes your natural state. You walk through storms with grace. You sit with suffering without collapsing into it. You begin to see life as a dream, sometimes beautiful, sometimes terrifying, but always impermanent. After countless lifetimes of emotional highs and lows, your soul simply becomes weary of drama. It seeks only truth, awareness, and stillness. This doesn't mean you've shut down emotionally. Quite the opposite, you still feel deeply, but you're no longer ruled by emotion. You understand that attachment causes suffering. Presence dissolves it. People may start turning to you for wisdom or comfort, often without knowing why. They sense your peaceful presence like a calming balm amid their storms. Your peace begins to uplift others, not because you try, but because you embody stillness. And peace is contagious. If you've noticed this steady inner calm during difficult times, it's not just maturity. It could be your soul's final awakening. 5. A feeling of being different or misunderstood. Have you often felt like you don't quite belong in this world? As if you're watching from the outside instead of participating fully. This deep internal sense of being different is one of the most powerful emotional indicators that your soul is nearing its final incarnation. Souls in their last life cycle frequently feel like outsiders, even as children. While others get swept up in trends, conflict, or the pursuit of material success, you may find yourself questioning the purpose behind it all. You might feel out of sync with societal expectations, uninterested in surface-level goals, and confused by destructive habits that others accept without question. This feeling of not fitting in isn't a defect, it's your soul's inner wisdom emerging. In Buddhist thought, as the soul matures, it begins detaching from Maya, the grand illusion that keeps humanity bound to ego, desire, and suffering. Those who begin waking from this illusion often experience isolation, not because they are broken, but because they are awakening in a world that still sleeps. Others may not understand you. They might describe you as too sensitive, too serious, too quiet, or even too intense. They don't see the spiritual depth in your gaze or the timeless wisdom your soul carries. You might try to conform, but doing so leaves you feeling empty or disconnected. Eventually, you stop forcing yourself to be accepted and begin embracing your unique path, even if it leads you alone at times. You may not resonate with your birth family or cultural roots. Although you may still love them, it often feels as if your spirit has outgrown the beliefs and behaviors they live by. You start to seek truth elsewhere, in books, philosophy, silence, or nature. This sign can be emotionally painful because the human heart longs for belonging. But your soul didn't come here to conform, it came here to transcend. And that means walking the solitary path that few around you can truly grasp. Over time, your loneliness transforms into spiritual strength. You no longer need approval. You stop shrinking yourself to fit into anyone's expectations. You recognize your uniqueness as a sacred sign that your soul is moving beyond karma and toward awakening. If you feel like an old soul, wise, intuitive, and somewhat out of place in the modern world, you're not lost. You are evolving. 6. A natural detachment from the ego. In the final stages of the soul's reincarnation, a major and irreversible shift begins to unfold. The ego starts to dissolve. Unlike in earlier lifetimes, where the ego controlled your choices, image, and sense of worth, this time you begin to see it for what it is, an illusion. You no longer feel the need to prove yourself. Things like titles, image, competition, or external validation begin to lose their importance. It's not that you no longer care about succeeding. It's that your value is no longer tied to how others perceive you. This quiet release from ego is a profound marker of spiritual evolution. Buddhism teaches that the ego is at the core of suffering. It constantly seeks attention, approval, superiority, and attachment to stay alive. But a soul nearing enlightenment begins to recognize these traps for what they are. You may notice compliments don't inflate your pride, and criticism doesn't wound you as deeply. Why? Because your identity is no longer rooted in the external world, it's anchored in awareness itself. You may still experience moments of anger or envy, but they pass like clouds across a clear sky. You stop identifying with these emotions. They become fleeting visitors in your consciousness. You feel less need to defend your image and more desire to practice humility. You listen more. You speak less. You no longer strive to outshine anyone. Instead, you seek to understand and uplift. This shift also transforms how you handle setbacks. Rather than viewing failure or rejection as personal wounds, you begin to see them as chances for growth or as karmic lessons in disguise. You become quieter, more mindful, and less reactive. This kind of calm doesn't come from books. It's earned over lifetimes of spiritual learning. In your final incarnation, authenticity takes the place of performance. You stop trying to impress, persuade, or dominate others. You become softer, more forgiving, and more at peace. And paradoxically, this quiet humility becomes magnetically powerful. If you find yourself no longer caring who wins, who gets the spotlight, or who's right, you may be standing on the threshold of liberation. Here, the self dissolves and true freedom begins. 7. A deep sense of purpose without needing to know why. Another key sign of being in your final reincarnation is a profound inner sense of purpose, even when you can't fully explain it. This feeling doesn't arise from ambition or societal goals. It emerges from within like a steady, quiet force guiding your every move. Even if the direction isn't always clear, you trust this inner pull completely. You may feel like you're here to do something meaningful, not for fame or fortune, but for healing, awareness, or transformation. Even if your life appears ordinary on the outside, you carry a quiet sense that your existence matters deeply. You begin to realize that your words, actions, and intentions create ripples that reach far beyond what you can see. Living with integrity, kindness, and consciousness becomes your mission. In Buddhist teachings, this soul-aligned direction is known as Dharma, your true spiritual path. Unlike karma, which binds, Dharma frees the soul. When you start walking your Dharma, your choices become less about what's expected and more about what feels true. You may feel drawn to certain people, places, or experiences without any rational explanation. You might take unexpected turns in life that others question, but deep down, you know they are significant. This intuitive compass grows stronger during your final incarnation. You no longer need detailed plans or absolute clarity. You simply trust that the journey is unfolding exactly as it should. Even during confusion or hardship, a quiet voice inside encourages you to keep moving forward. And you do because you've replaced fear with faith. You start to care less about success and more about leaving a positive impact. Whether you're comforting someone, creating art, growing a garden, or sitting in meditation, every action feels sacred. You sense that you are part of something greater than yourself. You may even feel like a vessel being carried by divine intelligence, and you surrender to that flow without resistance. Souls in their final life cycle often express this through service. Whether through teaching, healing, creating, or simply radiating calmness, your purpose becomes less about doing and more about being. Being honest, being loving, being present. If you've felt that gentle but persistent inner nudge to live with meaning, even without knowing exactly why your soul may be nearing its final return. 8. An inner peace that cannot be shaken. One of the most sacred signs that your soul is nearing the end of its reincarnation cycle is the emergence of a deep, unwavering peace within. This peace doesn't depend on your circumstances. It exists even during chaos, heartbreak, or uncertainty. It's the calm presence in your heart that whispers, "Everything is as it should be." You may still feel sadness, pain, or fear, but they no longer control you. Instead of resisting life, you begin to flow with it. You accept what comes and release what goes. You no longer cling to outcomes or try to force reality into your expectations. This deep peace is born from lifetimes of spiritual practice and surrender. In Buddhist teachings, this is the fruit of equanimity, the ability to remain centered and compassionate regardless of external events. You begin to see suffering not as punishment, but as part of the soul's growth. You stop blaming others or circumstances and instead turn inward for answers. You may spend more time in silence, meditation, or nature not to escape, but to reconnect with your true self. You feel a sacred stillness in moments where others might feel panic or despair. This doesn't mean you're detached or emotionless. It means you've cultivated spiritual resilience, a steady flame that remains lit even in the darkest night. You no longer need to chase pleasure or run from pain. You simply allow both to pass through you like wind through trees. This inner stillness is a sign that the karmic storms have mostly passed. Your soul is no longer in reaction, it is in remembrance. You remember that you are not this body, not this story, not this fleeting experience, but pure awareness itself. And from that remembrance comes peace. If you feel a serenity inside that no external force can shake, it is one of the clearest signs that your soul is close to liberation. 9. Compassion without judgment. As you near the final stages of your soul's journey, your heart expands beyond anything you thought possible. You begin to love not selectively, but universally. You feel deep compassion for all beings, even those who have caused harm. This kind of love does not condone cruelty, but it sees beyond the surface. It sees the pain, the ignorance, the karma behind each action. Buddhism calls this boundless compassion, karuna, the ability to feel another's suffering as your own, without attachment or judgment. When you are in your final reincarnation, your ego no longer filters who deserves love and who doesn't. You begin to forgive more easily. You stop keeping score. You see that everyone is doing the best they can from their current level of awareness. This doesn't mean you become passive or allow mistreatment. It means you act from wisdom and kindness rather than from anger or revenge. You may find yourself silently blessing people instead of criticizing them. Even in conflict, you hold space for peace. You radiate a gentle energy that calms others without needing to say a word. You become a safe place for others to be seen, heard, and healed. People may feel drawn to you, not because of what you do, but because of who you are. You feel empathy even for those who oppose you. You recognize their suffering beneath their masks. This kind of compassion is not weakness, it is divine strength. It comes from a soul that has suffered, grown, and transcended. A soul that no longer needs to be right, superior, or separate. If you find yourself loving more deeply, forgiving more quickly, and judging less often, it may be because your soul has nearly completed its return to oneness. 10. A profound readiness to go home. Perhaps the most mysterious and sacred sign of being in your final reincarnation is the quiet, wordless sense that you're ready to go home. This isn't a morbid desire for death. It's a longing to return to the source. You feel that you've experienced what you came here to experience. You've learned, loved, suffered, and awakened. You've completed the curriculum of human life. You no longer fear death. Instead, you welcome it as a transition, a return to the infinite light from which you came. This readiness is not rooted in sadness. It's rooted in fulfillment. You still live fully and love deeply, but without grasping. You're not running from life, but you are no longer clinging to it either. You begin to feel the veil thinning between the physical and the spiritual. You receive messages through dreams, intuition, or synchronicities that hint at your soul's preparation. You may feel a presence guiding you gently from beyond, perhaps ancestors, spirit guides, or your higher self. You begin to live each moment as a goodbye and a homecoming at the same time. You cherish the little things, a breeze, a smile, a sunset, knowing they are part of your final chapter. This readiness isn't spoken aloud. It's held quietly in the heart. It doesn't mean your life ends soon. It means your attachments have, and in that sacred release, your soul is finally free. Reaching the end of your reincarnation cycle is not about escaping life, but about embodying it so fully, so truthfully, that you no longer need to return. It is the final blossoming of the soul after lifetimes of effort, suffering, love, and awakening. It is the moment the drop realizes it has always been the ocean. If these signs resonate deeply with you, do not fear. You are not disappearing, you are dissolving into something greater. Your life, no matter how ordinary it seems, may be the final note in a long and sacred symphony. And when that final note fades, silence remains, but not emptiness, freedom, peace, nirvana. And the journey is complete.